If you suspected that the FBI investigation into Trump Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh was a sham investigation, you'd be correct, because new reporting by the New York Times indicates that the FBI and the whole process of the investigation was not only lacked the thorough nature necessary to do a real investigation, the important tips that came to the FBI were then transitioned over to the executive branch, which had no real interest in doing the investigation in the first place. So the FBI Assistant Director, Jill Tyson, said that the most relevant of the 4,500 tips that the agency received during an investigation into Kavanaugh's past were referred to White House lawyers in the Trump administration, whose handling of them remains unclear. Now, this was a letter that the FBI Assistant Director sent to Democratic members of the Senate who wanted some clarity about what really transpired during that investigation. For those of you who are wondering, wait, what was that investigation again? It was after a former classmate of Brett Kavanaugh's, Dr. Christine Blasey Ford, came forward with allegations of attempted rape. In fact, she testified about that under oath, and I want to remind you all about what she said.
Early in the evening, I went up a very narrow set of stairs leading from the living room to a second floor to use the restroom. When I got to the top of the stairs, I was pushed from behind into a bedroom across from the bathroom. I couldn't see who pushed me. Brett and Mark came into the bedroom and locked the door behind them. There was music playing in the bedroom. It was turned up louder by either Brett or Mark once we were in the room. I was pushed onto the bed and Brett got on top of me. He began running his hands over my body and grinding into me. I yelled, hoping that someone downstairs might hear me, and I tried to get away from him, but his weight was heavy. Brett groped me and tried to take off my clothes. He had a hard time because he was very inebriated and because I was wearing a one-piece bathing suit underneath my clothing. I believed he was going to rape me. I tried to yell for help. When I did, Brett put his hand over my mouth to stop me from yelling. This is what terrified me the most and has had the most lasting impact on my life. It was hard for me to breathe, and I thought that Brett was accidentally going to kill me.
She managed to escape, but her testimony before the Senate Judiciary Committee was so compelling that a Republican senator, Jeff Flake, called for an investigation. Watch.
I think it would be proper to delay the floor vote for up to, but not more than 1 week, in order to let the FBI continue to do an investigation limited in time and scope to the current allegations that are there, and limited in time to no more than 1 week. And I will vote to advance the bill to the floor with that understanding.
So what Senator Flake was calling for there wasn't even, in my opinion, enough, right? He was calling for a limited investigation, 1 week long, which I'd argue isn't enough time to do an investigation. But the FBI wrapped it up within a week. It wasn't even a full week of investigation. And now we're learning more details. For instance, the agency was conducting a background check rather than a criminal investigation, meaning that the authorities, policies, and procedures used to investigate criminal matters did not apply. And the investigation was fishy from the start. Here's more detail into it. The Trump White House carefully controlled the investigations into Kavanaugh's past. After Dr. Ford came forward, Trump's staff tried to limit the number of people the FBI interviewed as part of that probe. Only after an outcry from Democrats over the president's approach did the administration say the agency could conduct a more open investigation. But ultimately, only 10 witnesses were interviewed by the FBI. Dr. Ford and Kavanaugh themselves were never interviewed by the FBI. And also in a recent interview with the author Michael Wolff, Trump put his handling of Justice Kavanaugh into stark terms, asking, "Where would he be without me? I saved his life." Yeah, he helped Kavanaugh get confirmed into the Supreme Court, even though there were credible allegations of attempted rape against him, which were not thoroughly investigated. It's just, Dr. Richey, I want to bring you in. I want to hear your thoughts on all of this, because it's a story that's like kind of haunted me ever since it all took place. And now we're learning more details. And of course it was a sham investigation.
Yeah, I remember reporting on this on my radio show. Her testimony was so compelling. She has tons of credibility. She had so much to lose. Getting involved in something like that when you are a career professional, when you have significant connections to your profession and the community, and you know how they have already demonized others that would dare tell the truth. Here's the greatest example you will find of white privilege in the United States. A man is still a Supreme Court justice. With credible allegations like this, it did not pause the Republicans. They did it in record time. They did it in record time. How do you do that? And this is what I can't understand, Anna, and I really don't seek to understand it. I have a mama. I have aunties. I have sisters. I have a daughter. I don't care what my politics may be. If I hear this about someone who I'm in position to say they're going to become one of the most powerful people on the planet Earth, that has to give me pause just as a human being, but it gave them none.
Yeah, I mean, I remember Lindsey Graham, breaking out in complete spectacle in order to, make it seem as though Brett Kavanaugh was the real victim here. I mean, it was just absolutely shameful. And look, when the right wing wants to accomplish something, they will stop at nothing. And in this case, there's been a decades-long project by right-wing organizations funded by right-wing donors to essentially skew every branch of government in favor of conservatives, which is why Donald Trump succeeded in confirming not just 3 Supreme Court justices, but hundreds, literally hundreds of federal judges. And we're gonna be feeling the ramifications of that for the rest of our lives, really. And so when we talk about strategic voting or electoral politics, as I've said a million times on this show, it is not the end all be all, and organizing, outside pressure, that's also an important part of this. Organized labor, that's an important part of this. But to pretend as though electoral politics means nothing, anyone who tries to convince you of that or persuade you of that wants your side to lose, period. These elections are important because while there are certainly many issues with the Democratic Party, I would argue I'd rather have a member of the Democratic Party nominating federal judges and Supreme Court justices as opposed to right-wingers who are doing so specifically to protect corporate interests and conservative values in this country.
Yeah, I agree with you. And it's like this, Democrats don't do enough, but Republicans don't do a damn thing. So if you're in a framework where you have to make a decision with one or the other, be strategic about your decision, obviously, while at the same time pushing the overall agenda in the right direction. But you're right, Anna, there's so many individuals who will say, well, I don't participate in electoral politics because they're all corrupt, or none of them go far enough, or none of them really hold my agenda. Well, remember, you have to continue to push the agenda. This is chess, not checkers. And here's what I mean when I say that. In checkers, you're used to making a move in order to win or to take a piece off the board. In chess, each move is to position yourself for the ultimate move. And if we're not thinking in that context, if we're thinking that one move has to rule the board, rather than thinking that we are strategically moving various pieces at various times so that we can have the ultimate position in order to win this game, then we're failing at the game of politics.
Absolutely, and as much as I hate to admit it, right-wing groups have been playing chess. They have been thinking strategically, and that's the reason why they've been able to win the courts. And it's really scary stuff when you think about, all the efforts and all the effort that needs to be put into various victories. Let's say something as important as Medicare for all, for instance. Medicare for all could be struck down by a conservative Supreme Court. So even if we finally make headway on important policies that we want to accomplish, if the federal courts and the Supreme Court is taken over by right-wing judges, that policy is still incredibly vulnerable to getting struck down. So these are all things to think about as we end up with the inevitable debates about who to vote for and whether or not electoral politics matters. But when I think of Brett Kavanaugh, I remember why it is that it was so important to defeat Donald Trump in 2016. Even if the person he was running against wasn't my favorite candidate by any stretch of the imagination. To know that we have someone like Brett Kavanaugh as a Supreme Court justice right now is just a reality that I wish I didn't have to live with, but we do. And now we know for sure that investigation didn't even scratch the surface. It's just absolutely shameful.